for proposal, competitive sealed proposal, there's a 30-day, so I'm not real sure what the intent of this is.
It seemed the intent was to prevent certain agencies from requiring a 5-day protest that's normally struck down. I'm sorry, apparently audio is not working. We'll take a quick recess. Okay, reconvening. Sorry about that. Very quick tech fix there. So please continue.
Okay, so in the request for proposals, that there's a 30-day window. So I guess I would have to ask, what is the intent? That it's too close to when the proposals are due, that they don't have enough time, so they want to extend. So, for example, if the agency requests for additional information or inquiry, response to inquiries, and then they ask for it 2 days before solicitation is due, and then the due date comes and they don't have an opportunity to protest. So I'm not sure what the intent is.
So it does seem a little strange that you would have to be limited to 5 days after the bid protest goes out in order to make a protest on the, I'm sorry, after the bid requests go out to make a protest on that bid, but additional information could come out, addendums could be added to the bid procurement, which is to the bid request after those 5 days, in which case, I mean, that doesn't really line up.
Right, right now there is no deadline, 5 days. It just says if you're going to protest the contents of the solicitation, it's due before the solicitation closes. So
My reading of it was 5 days after you knew or should have known, and then they were interpreting that as the release of the bid request or the request for bids.
that's mostly for when the awards are made. It could happen, but the key is it has to be done before solicitation is due. That's the bottom line.
Okay, I'll tell you what, I will probably defer this bill if you will promise me that you will talk to people and clarify this, because this bill really was meant as a clarification to this problem, and it seems like there's inconsistent application of it. So if we can work this out on the side and not need this bill, then I'm fine with that too.
Okay, I'll talk to Public Works, talk to Transportation, who is here, and see how they're doing their solicitations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Members, any other questions? Okay, if not, let's move on to HB 964 relating to the certification of documents. First up, we have Lieutenant Governor Sylvia Luke.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. In strong support, this bill, one of the statutory requirements of the LG's office is to certify documents for use in a foreign country. And I think I spoke to some of you before. The cost for a certification by the Lieutenant Governor's office is $1. But because we don't accept personal checks or any other form other than cash or cashier's check, you actually have to go to a bank to spend $15 for a $1 cashier's check. A lot of times, because people are not used to doing cashier's check, they forget to fill out the information. So they send $1, and then our office would, if you see something wrong with the application, we have to send it back. And because these are original documents, a lot of times it costs more than $1 to send it back. And then when we have to send it to a foreign country, it costs, of course, more than $1 to send it back. What we're requesting in this bill is increasing the amount of an apostille application from $1 to $10, setting up a special fund so that we can defray some of the costs. One of the things that we are planning to use, the funding raise from the apostille application, is to set up an online system so that people can apply online. Right now, there is no avenue for them to apply online. The other thing that we are looking at is contracting out with a financial institution to allow for credit card or Venmo or other form of payment, because in this day and age where rest of the state has moved on to non-cash based form of payment, this specific duty is still cash based and cashier's check. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next up, we have the Attorney General's Office with comments.
Morning, Chair Matayoshi, Vice Chair Garrett, members of the committee, Deputy Attorney General Candace Park. Just want to point out that in order for funds to be expended from the fund, we would need to have appropriation language, which we provided in our testimony. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a lot. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? If not, members, any questions? Vice Chair.
Actually, Acting Governor. Thanks for being here this morning. So in your testimony, you referenced that you're unable to accept credit card or web-based payment. Is that because is that a statutory limitation?
It is a statutory limitation. What we wanted to do is take a look at the whole system before we're coming back to the legislature to allow for statutory fixes. A lot of times, these documents are not accepted first by our office. So it goes to Department of Health to look, to ask Department of Health for birth certificate or marriage certificate. So this dollar that somebody sends, the apostille applications are not only done through our office, it could be done through DOH, it could be done through Bureau of Conveyance or other avenues. So what we wanted to do is, before we make statutory changes, we wanted to understand the entire framework so that we can help all the departments align and then bring them up to speed.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, members, any further questions? All right, if not, let's move on to HB 987, relating to labor data collection. First up, we've got DBET in support.
Good morning, Chair and Vice Chair. Eugene Tian, Economic Research Administrator. We stand on our written testimony in support. I'm here to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have DLIR in support.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Bill Kunzman, Deputy Director, Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. We'll stand on our testimony in support and be available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Chamber of Commerce in opposition. Not present. Next, we have Retail Merchants of Hawaii in opposition. Not present? Okay. All right, that's all the testifiers we have signed up to testify today. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Members, any questions? Okay, I've got one for DBET. So I asked you to be here today, and I appreciate you being here. Your clarification email said that this is necessary because this responsibility is being transferred from DLIR to DBET. The phrasing in this is a little concerning to me. It seems a little broad. I actually agree with the Chamber that it's a little broad, and you've helped to narrow that. My question is, what is this phrasing mirroring the phrasing that gave DLIR the authority to collect this data, or is it different here?
Yeah, the language is actually proposed by our AG based on the law, I think it's Title 21, Section 371(11). So DLIR was collecting the data, I believe it was in the last 7 years. And since the program transferred to our division, we have been collecting the data for the last 2 years. And I do agree that the language is kind of broad, especially the language we are saying about the conditions, practices of employment, and we ask for keeping the record for 5 years. And we are willing to drop those specifics and just collecting data on the employment, hours, earnings by industry, and also by occupation.
Okay, thank you. DLIR? When you folks were collecting this data, is this the terminology that was used to give you folks the authority to collect it?
It was similar but not exact, and we still collect that data.
Okay. Did you collect conditions of employment and such?
No.
Okay. So what DBED just said about cutting those things, sorry, going back one more. Did you keep the records for 5 years or 1 year, or how long did you keep them for? Or do you keep them for?
Forever. Maybe I could ask, and
Okay.
I'm sorry, UI Administrator Pereira Eustachio, she is the subject matter.
Good morning, Chair, Vice
Morning.
Chair, and members of the committee. Ann Eustachio, Unemployment Insurance Administrator. And so in regards to your questions, we still collect employer and employee wage data for federal reporting purposes. We always did for the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And that reporting gets reported to the federal government to report data on data elements that Bureau of Labor Statistics keep. When the section was transferred over to DBED, we still collect the data that was required, and we still report that data through that section to U.S. Department of Labor. Additional elements that are being requested within this bill are not the elements that we would normally collect.
Okay, so you guys didn't collect it, DBED saying they don't need it, so it should be fine to cut them. Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm not sure what DBED needs,
Okay.
but U.S. Department of Labor requires only specific data right now to be collected. We do collect that data. We do share it with the BLS section at DBED that was moved to DBED, and the reporting is still done through the Department of Labor, through U.S. Department of Labor, Hawaii Department of Labor through U.S. Department of Labor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Okay. If not, let's move on to HB 1000, relating to public employment cost items. We're actually here to testify about this. All right, first up, Budget and Finance in support.
Chair, Vice Chair Louis Oliveri, Department of Budget and Finance will stand on our written testimony on this and the next block of bills, which are all similar vehicles for collective bargaining.
Okay. UPW in support.
Good morning, Chair Matayoshi, Vice Chair Garrett, Tulitifi Government Affairs Specialist for the UPW. We stand on our written testimony, and I'll be available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Last up, HHSC in support. And then the next, a lot of these are very similar, so if you want to just stand on your testimony for all of them, feel free.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Chair Matoyoshi and Vice Chair Garrett. My name is Juanita Lauti. I'm the Vice President, Chief Human Resources Officer for the HHSC. I'm testifying on behalf of Dr. Linda Rosen. We stand our written testimony in strong support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Members, any questions? Okay, let's move on to HB 1001, relating to public employment cost items. First up, we have University of Hawaii in support. Okay, next up, we have, not here, next up we have DBED in support, and we've got HHSC in support.
Still on our written testimony in support.
Okay. I'm just going to assume for the rest of them too. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Members, any questions? Okay, moving on to HB 1002, relating to public employment cost items. We have DBED in support, and we have HHSC in support. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Oh, I'm sorry, BNF in support. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Members, any questions? Okay, let's move on to HB 1003, relating to public employment cost items. We've got BNF in support, and we've got HHSC in support. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Members, any questions? Okay, we'll move on to HB 1004, relating to public employment cost items. We've got Budget and Finance in support, HSTA in support.
Aloha, Chair and members of the committee. The Hawaii State Teachers Association. Oh, I'm Laverne Moore speaking on behalf of President Osatui Jr., President of the Hawaii State Teachers Association. The Hawaii State Teachers Association strongly supports House Bill 1004. The bargaining unit members are looking forward to a great contract so that we can retain and recruit teachers into our classroom. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Members, any questions? All right, let's move on to HB 1005 relating to public employment cost items. First up, we have Department of Budget and Finance in support, and we've got HGEA also in support. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Members, any questions? Okay, moving on to HB 1006 relating to public employment cost items. We've got University of Hawaii in support, Budget and Finance in support, and UHPA in support.
Serving for Christian Firm, UHPA stands in this.
Okay, anyone else here to testify on this measure? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions? All right, moving on to HB 1007 relating to public employment cost items. We have Budget and Finance in support. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Members, any questions? This is fun. Moving on, HB 1008. I bet you can guess what I'm about to say. Budget and Finance in support. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Members, any questions? Okay, moving on to HB 1009 relating to public employment cost items. Oh, I'm sorry, HHSC was also in support of the last one. HB 1009, we've got Budget and Finance in support, UPW in support, and HHSC in support. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Okay. If not, members, any questions? Moving on to HB 1010, relating to public employment cost items. We've got Budget and Finance in support, HHSC in support, a number of others writing in support. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Members, any questions? Okay, moving on to HB 1011, relating to public employment cost items. We've got Budget and Finance in support, HHSC in support. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Members, any questions? Okay, HB 1012, relating to public employment cost items. This is why we have too many bargaining units, by the way. Budget and Finance in support. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Members, any questions? Okay, moving on to HB 1013, relating to the repeal of Act 192, Session Laws of Hawaii 2007. We have one testifier in support, ERS.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Tom Williams, the Executive Director of the Employees Retirement System, and appreciate the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 1013, which would repeal annual reporting requirements on behalf of the ERS for investments in Sudan. The Sudan is no longer on the terrorism watch list, and the conditions applicable to repeal that are set in statute have been met. We have no investments in the Sudan, and continued responsibility to report represents a modest administrative burden, but an expense to the ERS and to its investment managers as they pour through literally thousands of transactions to assure there are no Sudan investments, of which we have none. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm available to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here to testify in this measure? Members, any questions? I do have one. I just want to clarify, and this was in your written testimony as well, but the reason we're doing this is because it's required by statute when certain conditions are met, and those conditions have been met. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have HB 1014 relating to Employees Retirement System Disability Requirement. First up we have DLIR in support.
Chair will stand on testimony in support.
Okay. Now that we're through all the quick bills. Just come up to the mic so that people online and YouTube can record it as well. Thank you.
Sorry. Bill Kunzman, DLIR, will stand on our testimony and support and be available for questions. Thank you.
Next up, ERS in support.
Yes, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, appreciate the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 1014. This bill is intended to clarify the conditions under which service-connected disability benefits are made available to our members so as to accord with the original legislative intent. The bill, when first introduced, or the act when introduced, would provide benefits for those who are in hazardous duty positions like police and fire, sewer workers who were exposed to hazardous conditions or accidents on the workplace that resulted in an permanent incapacitation. The courts have interpreted hazardous duty and workplaces to extend to almost any workplace and to include lifting of boxes, the opening of cans with manual can openers and the like. And we want to clarify this, that it's limited to not to just any occupation, but those which are absolutely hazardous. Also, as it relates to accidental injury, it is allowed that the accident can occur over a period of time and not at a definite place in time. So the benefits that are provided are extensive. It's no minimum age, no vesting requirements. The employees are returned their benefits, and it creates an unfunded liability for the ERS when these benefits are accorded improperly. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Good, thank you. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Members, any questions? Okay, let's move on to HB 1138 relating to employees of Hawaii Health Systems Corporation. First up, we have UPW in support.
Hello again, Chair Matayoshi, Vice Chair Garrett, members of the committee, Tuli Tafai Government Affairs Specialist at the UPW. We stand on our testimony that was submitted. However, I did want to note UPW members who are employed by HHSC were subjected to the most severe working conditions during the COVID-19 pandemic due to their continued exposure to the virus. Despite being entitled to temporary hazard pay pursuant to the provisions of the current and past collective bargaining agreements, the employer still has not offered to negotiate a settlement with the union. We believe the appropriation proposed in this measure could help partially remedy this obligation to these public employees by funding their pay raises. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I do want to try to keep our comments germane to the bills at hand, but we appreciate your sentiment. All right, next up, HHSC in support.
Good morning again, Chair and Vice Chair and panel members. My name is Juanita Lauti, and we are going to stand on our written testimony in strong support of the bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'm assuming there's no one else here from HHSC. I've got you on twice. Anyone else here to testify in this measure? If not, members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to HB 1370 relating to the state archives. First up, we have UH in support.
Good morning, Chair Matayoshi, Vice Chair Garrett, members of the committee. My name's Alan Rosenfeld. I'm the Associate Vice President for Academic Programs and Policy for the University of Hawaii System. I'm here to stand on the written testimony as submitted on behalf of Vice President Deborah Halbert, and University of Hawaii is happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have DAGS in support.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, I am Dr. Adam Jansen, and I have the privilege of serving as State Archivist and Administrator of the Public Archives. On behalf of Comptroller Regan, DAG stands on its testimony in strong support of this bill, and I welcome the opportunity to address any questions or concerns you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here to testify about this measure? If not, members, any questions? Okay, I've got a question for UH. In your testimony, you stated that this work was going to be duplicative if we allowed the state archives to collect this additional medium. I'm a little concerned, though. It doesn't seem to be UH's mission to preserve this like it is the State Archives' mission to do such. Do you think that you could transfer your current efforts to the State Archives or your current collections to the State Archives?
Chair Manoshi, yeah, thank you very much for your question. I also have a subject matter expert. We have the University librarian from UH Manoa, Clem Guthrow. But I would give one example. So currently there's the State Digital Archives, the State Archives for Moving Images. The Henry Juni Archive is housed at the University of Hawaii at the West Oahu campus, and that has a special mission already to preserve, digitize all kinds of music, video recordings, and et cetera. So there are examples of specific units that we have that are already engaging in these practices. And of course, we have a vast collection of cultural related materials that are easily accessible to the larger community. Is it okay if I call up? Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Matayoshe and Vice Chair Garrett. Clem Guthrow, the University Librarian at UH Manoa. Like my colleague said, you know, the Ulu Archives, which is a statute driven or recorded archive, already does a lot of this work. We have, for decades at UH Manoa, collected vast amounts of Hawaiian-related material that support our academic programs. It would not be feasible to transfer this material to the State Archives. It would certainly undermine our ability to offer undergraduate and graduate level programs if all of this material moved. We have the capacity and the wherewithal to take care and digitize these materials. We have trained staff. The original mission of the archives states that it's to support government documents. To me, this is expanding beyond what the mission of the archives is.
Great, thank you. Dags?
Thank you for the opportunity. To be clear, the stated mission as encompassed in our legislative mandate is to, quote, collect all public archives, end quote. That is not restrictive in any way to governmental records. We are the public archives. We are the archives for the people, for the public. And this notion of being duplicative, you know, what we're talking here is not just recordings. Harry B. Sori of Territorial Airwaves donated his entire archives, not just recordings, but all of his intellectual work, his scripts for his radio programs, recordings of his radio programs, photographs. So it's a really hugely encompassing project, and that's just one small example. We had the distinction of being one of the only, if not the only, memory institution that stayed open through the pandemic, serving the public, because that's our mandate. And as a result, the public that had lots of opportunities to do nothing but stay at home and clean house donated materials to one of the only repositories answering the phone. And so while the Territorial Airways collection is probably the most premier, we've actually received dozens of donations in kind to really expand this. And our kuleana is to serve the public everywhere, whether they are stationed on Oahu or Vegas on the, wherever. And so we welcome the opportunity to have these resources to be able to digitize this irreplaceable, unique material and to make it available to the people at no cost. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could call UH back up again. Oh, members, does anyone else have a question? So, same team here, I think. I think that's pretty clear. Yeah. There shouldn't be any animosity between your departments. And when we're talking about digitizing records, it seems like it'd be fairly easy to duplicate the digitization to share them with each other. Is UH willing to work with DAGS and the State Archives to transfer digital copies to the State Archives for the State Archives records?
Oh, certainly. There's no problem in sharing digital copy at all. We were also open during the pandemic and answering the phone, and we do have a public mission as well. to serve the people of Hawaii. So
Is your archives as open to the public as DAG's is, though? As the state archives?
I don't know how open the state archives is.
How open are you?
Well, currently we are open. The Hawaiian collection is open 5 days a week. The library itself is open 7 days a week.
And the public is able to view all of the photographs and everything that you've collected?
They may need an appointment for some of the things, because some things are in closed storage. But yes.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Dax, are you guys okay with just getting digital copies from them, or do you need this expansion into photographs, photographic records, and such?
The long story short is, that's difficult to answer, because without knowing the methodology behind the creation of the digital records, it may not be to the standards that we hold ourselves to. I'm not familiar enough with the process and the policy. And we certainly don't want to impinge on the university and their ability to serve their main focus, which I presume is the university faculty and students. And the issue at hand is, just because we both have the same record doesn't necessarily mean we have the same record. The beautiful thing about this is, when you get a new copy, it may be of better fidelity, higher quality, pristine condition, as opposed to one that's been played over and over and over again. So redigitizing that using today's technology is going to give us a better fidelity copy than something that may have been done 5 or 10 years ago.
Okay. Thank you both. Members, any other questions? If not, let's move on to HB 854. First up, we have DLIR in opposition.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Bill Kunzman, Deputy Director, Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. Although the department appreciates the intent of this measure to help ensure that certain incumbent workers maintain gainful employment during a divestiture of a business entity subject to the Hawaii Dislocated Workers Law, we oppose this measure because it uses ambiguous terms and assigns responsibilities that would be difficult for us to implement. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Members, any questions? Okay, if not, we'll recess for decision making. Recess. Reconvening the Committee on Labor and Government Operations. It's still Thursday, February 9th, 2023, in conference room 309. First up on the agenda, we'll be decision-making on HB 816 for relating to public procurement. Chair's recommendation is to keep this moving. We're going to be redefining RFI and using a term that's more specific to just that period of time after the bid solicitation is made, or solicitation for bid is made. The suggestion was requests for additional information, but we're going to make it clear that it just relates to the bid request. So, and we're going to also be adding a section 1 of the bill, just adding a little more explanation as to the purpose of this bill and its intended function. Did I say defecting the date? I think so. Members, any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 816, the Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Capella?
Aye.
Representative Martinez?
Aye.
Representative Sayama?
Aye.
Representative Tam?
Aye.
And Representative Alcos?
Aye.
Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Up next, we have HB 964 relating to the certification of documents. We will be adopting the Attorney General's amendments and defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Members, any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 964, noting the presence of all members. Anyone voting no or with reservations? Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. And just in case I didn't say it before, we're defecting the date to June 30th, 3000 for HB 816. HB 987 relating to labor data collection. Per DBED, we will be deleting the categories of conditions and practices of employment. Data will only be kept for 1 year, and we are eliminating the need for the employer's former addresses, defecting the date to June 30th, 3000 with technical amendments as well. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 987, noting the presence of all members. Anyone voting no or with reservations? Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Next up, we will be dealing with the bargaining unit bills, starting with HB 1000 relating to public employment cost items. We'll just be defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 1000, the recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the presence of all members. Anyone voting no or with reservations? Chair, everyone votes aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. HB 1001 relating to public employment cost items, defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Any questions or comments? Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 1001, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the presence of all members. Anyone voting no or with reservations? Chair, everyone votes aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, moving on to HB 1002, defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Members, any questions or comments? Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 1002, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting no or with reservations? Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Moving on to HB 1003 relating to public employment cost items, defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Any questions or comments? Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 1003, recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting no or with reservations? Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to HB 1004 relating to public employment cost items, affecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Members, any questions or comments? Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 1004, recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting no or with reservations? Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to HB 1005 relating to public employment cost items, affecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Any questions or comments? Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 1005, the recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting no or with reservations? Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, moving on to HB 1006 relating to public employment cost items, affecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Members, any questions or comments? Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 1006, the recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting no or with reservations? Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, HB 1007 relating to public employment cost items, defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Members, any questions or comments? Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 1007, the recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting no or with reservations? Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, moving on to HB 1008, relating to public employment cost items, defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Members, any questions or comments? Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members now voting on House Bill 1008, recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting no or with reservations? Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, moving on to HB 1009, relating to public employment cost items, defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Members, any questions or comments? Not. Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 1009, the recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting no or with reservations? Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
And moving on to HB 1010, relating to public employment cost items, defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Members, any questions or comments? Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 1010, the recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting no or with reservations? Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to HB 1011, relating to public employment cost items, we're defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Members, any questions or comments? Vice Chair with the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 1011, recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting no or with reservations? Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to HB 1012, relating to public employment cost items, we're defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Members, any questions or comments? Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 1012, the recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting no or with reservations? Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Moving on to HB 1013, Chair's recommendation here is to defect the date to June 30th, 3000. I will be making a note in the committee report that this is done by statute, although I will note that there are still instabilities in the Darfur region. Defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Any questions or comments? Okay, if not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 1013, the recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting no or with reservations? Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, moving on to 1014. This is relating to the Employees Retirement System disability retirement. We're just affecting the date here to June 30th, 3000 with technical amendments. Members, any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 1014, the recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting no or with reservations? Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Moving on to HB 1138, relating to the employees of HHSC. We're just going to be defecting the date here, June 30th, 3000. Members, any questions or comments? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 1138, the recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting no or with reservations? Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, moving on to HB 1370, relating to the state archives. Spicier than I thought it would be for state archives. We are going to be adopting DAG's amendment to remove subsections B2 and B3 to address the federal fund, state fund mixing. I was thinking about adopting UH's amendment, but I'm not going to. I'd like UH and DAGs to speak before conference or as soon as possible and keep me in the loop about working this out between you two. So we're going to keep it in for now, keep it moving for continued discussion, defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. I believe it already has a blank appropriation. If not, we'll blank it. Members, any questions or comments? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 1370, the recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting no or with reservations? Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, moving on to HB 854, last bill on the agenda, relating to dislocated workers. We are defecting the date to June 30th, 3000, technical amendments, and I believe it already contains a blank appropriation, but if not, we'll blank it and note the amount in the committee report. Members, any questions or comments? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 854, the recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting no or with reservations? Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. We are adjourned.